All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Melanin Margin. I'm your host, Quaviondre Williams.
And I'm Daquon Wilson.
And this is the talk show dedicated to bringing the marginalized to the spotlight and uplift the Black voices that will no longer stay silent. So let's get into this week's race conversation. Social media censorship. Now, Daquon, is it the responsibility of the celebrity to teach your kids values?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
Not at all. I think
cut print to send it in.
We're done in the episode. But no, I think that when it comes to celebrities and social media, like they're people at the end of the day. And I think that they should be able to be artists and be expressive in whatever ways that they want. I think like my only caveat is like very particular people whose brand is entirely kid friendly. So if you have like a JoJo Siwa whose entire brand is just like identifying with youth and like that kid friendly kind of not watered down, but kind of childish in like the nicest way possible. If that's their entire brand, then I think then they have like that obligation because that is who their audience is, and they should be able to reach out to their audience in a positive way. But even with people like JoJo, they should be able to have that freedom to where, when they get older and they want to change how they express themselves and how they create, they should have that freedom.
Absolutely. I think it's so frustrating to see because I think that there is absolutely certain artists who are specific towards kids. Like there's the Kids Bop, there's the, like you said, the JoJo Siwas, there's the Disney kids, the Nickelodeon kids, stuff like that. Like, especially back in the day, like a Hannah Montana and Raven Simone and stuff like that. Like at that time in stage of their life and that stage of their career, they were unfortunately considered role models because they were catered towards a network that was catered towards a certain age bracket. But I do feel that certain artists are put on a pedestal of being models or role models when they never asked to be. You see, there's a difference between being hired as in a Nickelodeon or in a Disney or in a whatever as a kid-friendly person, but it's a whole nother thing when you are someone who's already made your stance in a adult genre and then are put under certain qualifications, like you have to act a certain way. You represent all women. You can't let these little girls think blink, blink, and blink. Specifically, people like Cardi B, Megan Thee Stallion, Lil Nas X. It's like, if your children listen to their music, that is not their fault. Like I would hear, do you remember when WAP came out?
Yes.
And like all the conservatives were, up in arms, like, how dare these grown-ass fucking women, how dare these grown-ass women rap about their vagina and having sex and dick and blah, blah, blah. And it's kind of like, okay, so we're going to forget that they're grown women. We're going to forget that they're rapping for adult women and men. We're forgetting that part, right?
Apparently.
Like if you don't like their music, that's one thing, but do not sit there and be like, there was one video, I don't know if you saw it, Daquon, but it was a video of Cardi B playing her music, right? Playing WAP, right? And Culture, her daughter, came downstairs and Cardi B was like, oh, no, and turned it off, right? And everybody in the comments were like, oh, you let our kids listen to it, but your kid can listen. I was kind of like, that was Cardi B being a good mother.
Oh,
because she knows that her music is not for children's ears. So you're trying to check her for not letting her, and it's crazy because especially in Black women, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Because if she let her listen to it, the comments would be up and fire. You let your daughter listen to this trash and sex and blah, blah, blah. And because she didn't, because she was actually being aware of what her child was intaking, she's the villain because your kid listens to her music. Like, do you see that, Daquon?
Yeah, and I think like at the end of the day, these celebrities did not sign up to be your parent. These celebrities did not sign up to be like a babysitter or a teacher or whatever like role model for a child's life. Like they did not sign up to it. Like people like Cardi B from the very beginning in their music was very sex positive, was very much like, hey, I was a stripper and I don't have anything to be ashamed about that. And I think that was very clear from the very beginning. And they did not sign up to be like this kid-friendly artist. And I think that when it comes to parents, like there's plenty of parental guidance that can be done. I think that if your child is listening to something that you don't want them listening to, there's ways of, having conversations about why it's bad or why
Yeah.
it's not appropriate right now. And, like maybe we shouldn't be giving children entire iPads at 3 years old. You know,
Maybe,
I
just
think that,
maybe.
part of it is also like having that access. And so you have children that like gets iPads at 3 and phones at like 6. And so they're able to like get onto like different social media platforms as well and see all of these things. And I think like for me, that responsibility is on the parent to like make sure they understand what their child is doing and what they're watching on YouTube or whatever. And like I completely understand that like it's hard to be a parent. Like
Yeah.
there's so much that you have to do. You can't monitor them every single day. But it's also not the responsibility of social media apps to be parenting your children for you.
Yeah, and I want to ask you about that too. Like, I do you think that there is a way, like, do you think that we should censor social media in a way to protect children from things they shouldn't be exposed to?
I
Or is that the parent's responsibility?
I think that it's the parents' responsibility. I think that when it comes to censorship on social media, children are irrelevant, to be frank.
Damn.
Like that sounds harsh, but when you have an app like Instagram or TikTok or whatever, they make it very clear in like their terms of use that you have to be 13 years or older to
Yeah.
like be on the app. So if somebody is under that age, they're breaking the terms of use, which can get their thing deleted, but also like if you have a phone, if you have an iPad, they all come equipped with like some type of parental control. So like
Yeah.
you can restrict it to be like, okay, my child can only go on YouTube Kids, or certain apps will only work for a certain amount of times. And
Yeah.
these things are built into phones already, but people just aren't using it because, some people aren't as aware of technology. And I think that like as if you are becoming a parent, I think it's very important for you to like get that knowledge and understand what's out there. And then by that time you're like 13, of course, like very explicit things, you don't want on social media, like because nobody wants to, open up TikTok and see like somebody's entire dick print out.
Yeah.
Like that's inappropriate, regardless of whether you're a teenager or adult. Like you
Yeah.
do not consent to like overtly sexual things like right in your face.
Yeah.
But also by the time you get to age 13, I think that's like a prime time for people to like start thinking about more of what's out there and like time to like have these deep conversation with your child about like what you deem appropriate, having different talks about important subjects.
Yeah, I think that it's honestly not at all the app's responsibility under no circumstances. I think that we have this weird thing where parents, and it's not just with social media. I noticed this movement also when I was younger, like video games and TV shows.
Mm,
They're like, it's too violent, it's too this, it's too that. But it's like these video games or these certain TV shows are not catered towards children, but children just happen to watch or play them. Now, that is not just because a app can be accessed by a child does not mean that app is responsible for making sure that child is protected, if that makes any sense.
yeah.
Because Instagram has had a really big problem, especially in the early 2000s when it first started popping off. Like, I don't know when it was, like early 2012, 11, I think, whatever. When it first started popping off, had a lot of problems with predators using the app to
Mhm.
act to get to 12, 13, 11 year olds, whatever, because it was so easy to get access to them on these apps and pretend to be somebody else. Now, I'm not saying that that's right, but what I am saying is that the reality is Instagram, yes, there should be guidelines to protect those children if something were to happen, obviously. But the reality is these apps are supposed to be monitored by the parents, by the people, the guardians, the people in charge. They should say, okay, what's going on your message board? Who's messaging you? Who are you following? How many people are you following? Stuff like that. Like these things are, once again, fall on the responsibility of the parent. The app is just a place where the stuff takes place. there are definitely guidelines that are like, there's pornography guidelines, I believe, on certain apps or whatever. There's certain guidelines. Did you remember that TikTok thing where the 13-year-old girl had posted a picture of her stuff and like made it her profile picture?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like the fact that that was even able to happen in the first place. It's like and Tumblr had a lot of problems with that too, with like child pornography getting put on there, and it's like the fact that that's even happening. Number one is a problem.
Right.
But the fact that like this is not, I feel like even if we're not talking about kids or even in let's take out the kid part, but adults in general, like this is not a adult app. It's not a Pornhub, it's not an XTube, it's not a OnlyFans. This is a app dedicated to the general population, and the general population deems certain types of acts or whatever indecent. So I feel like to a degree, the apps have a responsibility to monitor what content they allow,
Mm-hmm.
but that does not mean that they have to monitor who can access said content. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think that, kind of it brings up this question that I want to ask you, and like thinking about social media versus like things like TV and movies, of course, like with movies, you have like the ratings,
Yeah,
video games, you have like ESRB and all of that stuff. So do you think that social media should have like a rating system like TV and movies should do? So like not necessarily like the app itself is rated, teen or whatever, but like being like, hey, in your, I don't know, privacy settings or something like that, being like, hey, I want rated E content. I want, 18 plus content, whatever, like that.
absolutely. I think that that should definitely be an option there. I think that YouTube has that to some degree. It's like a temporary, it's like a thing like where they have YouTube Kids and
Mm-hmm.
YouTube Adult. So like kids can be on the app, but they only see kids related content, sort of like Netflix and Netflix Kids. I think that that should definitely be an option, because the reality is we can't keep children from social media. It's just
Right.
not, especially in the 21st century. Back in the day, it was like we don't have the phone access or whatever. But I think most phones, even when I was like a freshman in high school, most phones came with Facebook pre-installed.
Yeah.
So like even if you weren't in Facebook or on Facebook, it was already installed on the app. I remember making my first Facebook account when I was in 6th grade.
Same.
Yes. But like that's what I'm saying. Like there's so many people around you. So I feel like when you put in an age range, or because people lie or whatever the case may be, and I
Mm-hmm.
think that the problem is it's kind of Atkins towards the drinking thing, where it's like, yeah, the drinking age is 21. But the reason why 16, 17, and 18-year-olds are out there drinking is because, ooh, it's forbidden. Ooh, it's
Mm-hmm.
rebellious. It's dangerous. Ooh, it's kind of scary. And I think that if we demystify social media a little bit, like we talked about before with sex education, our previous episode, make sure you check that out. Not a little bit of promo there, but no, sort of like demystifying the idea of social media. So it's kind of like, yes, you can access social media. You can have a Twitter account. You can have an Instagram account. You can have a Snapchat or whatever the case may be, or whatever it is. But it has, like you said, a guideline for it. So it's like from ages whatever to 13, this is the content you can access within Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
In the ages of once you get 13, that's when it opens up the guidelines to be able to see all the content. Sort of like kind of a microcosm, and then it's the whole thing. So it's like I
Yeah.
feel like we can't pretend as if kids can't access this stuff. But we do have to understand that because they can. Now, I do think that apps do hold the responsibility of understanding their audience. So
Mm-hmm.
they understand who their app caters towards. So even though they are not making their app for children, all of these apps and all of these heads or whatever know exactly who's on their app. And they know that plenty of people lie. So I think that it is absolutely the app's responsibility to ensure that there is a safe space for people who are not of age.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that like advertising is such a big thing. Even thinking about, I think it was like COPPA or something like that, was like this internet bill that came out that was like really kind of striking down on like trying to make sure that things that are marketed towards kids are appropriate for
Yeah.
kids. So like if you have um easy to identify kid content, like the bright colors, the like, fast transitions, things like that, that would like directly appeal to kids, that would be flagged as being for kids, and like only certain advertisements can be put on things like that or
Yeah.
whatever. And I think that like thinking more about like how we censor content, I also think that like content creators should have like their agency to kind of self censor their content, to be like, hey, I only want my content going out to people who are 18 plus, or
Yeah.
I only want my content going out to this very specific age range, because that's like what my content is like being towards. Because like even if we think about traditional media, quote unquote, movies have like this entire like kind of academy or whatever that reviews different things and kind of sets the ratings.
Mhm.
If you're like a music artist, your label determines, what rating your
Music
music
is.
is.
Mhm.
And then like video games, there's like a review board, and same with like TV shows, like they have their own like review board by the network. So like even each network will have like different ratings for a show. But I think that also giving the content creator agency to be like, hey, my content not kid friendly, don't want kids watching it, or you
Yeah.
know what, mine's is. Of course, some sense of making sure and double checking, because of course like there are predators out there that will be
Yeah.
like, hey, my content is kid friendly, but in reality they're trash human beings. And so some level of oversight there, but also having that second layer of content creator agency.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I think that once again, absolutely have those guidelines in place on apps and have that kid friendly space, but also be having extra. And I feel like it should be extra monitors in kid friendly spaces to ensure that certain things like that scary thing that went around back in the day, the Momo crap. You remember that?
Mhm.
Like being put in certain kids' videos or whatever. Like there should be a censor or somebody looking at shit like that to ensure that that stuff doesn't happen, because it was like it was some really creep. You remember that thing, right?
Yeah.
It was like this weird, creepy thing that was just like telling kids to do crazy stuff where it'll kill you and blah blah whatever, whatever. And it's like that kind of stuff shouldn't have happened. There should have been extra monitoring in kid-friendly zones to ensure that shit like that doesn't happen or happens very, very seldom. And also to make sure that we're not catering these kids towards certain we're not allowing certain people to get access to kid spaces. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? So there's definitely a responsibility there in those applications that I don't think that they have there either, because there are so many. Like I said, Tumblr had a really big problem with child pornography and stuff like that, and to the point where they actually just stopped making content, stop allowing adult content at all. And I was like, well, that's a problem, because it's like the adult creators or whatever the case may be who got their audience from Tumblr. They needed that social site to get to their audience, but because the app didn't want to take the time to actually have people monitor what content was being put out and what types of content was being put out to make sure that children weren't being involved in that content, instead of actually hiring people to do that, they were like, just fuck it all. But that's
Right.
another conversation for another day. But back to let's go back to the social media thing though. Like, it's crazy because there's so much about it that is wrong, because I've noticed a lot of racism within the censorship of social media apps. And I wanted to ask you about that, Daquon. Do you think that censorship among social media apps is racist?
Yeah.
I
Let's
mean,
be honest. I feel like my answer for everything is yeah, racism. But I
supremacy, yeah.
think that there is evidence to support that, a lot of evidence to support that. When you think about a lot of social media apps like TikTok or YouTube, a lot of their features is done by an algorithm, and
Mm-hmm.
time again we've seen that algorithms can have biases, but also troubles like figuring out certain things that are appropriate. with like artificial intelligence. Like I remember, reading this article that was like Google AI had difficulties distinguishing between gorillas and black people, which is a problem. Um,
Are you serious?
yeah, it's crazy, but
That's not funny, but what the fuck?
it's crazy because, what happens a lot of times is you have to think about who's in the room when the code is being made.
Mm-hmm.
Artificial intelligence isn't just like, boom, we got it. Like they
Mm-hmm.
have to go through different trials and tests to like make sure they're tracking things correctly and like developing it. So if artificial intelligence is just being used by or being coded by white people, then things that are associated with whiteness is going to have a higher degree of efficacy in terms of
Mm-hmm.
making that connection. But if black people aren't in the room, if Asian people aren't in the room, if Latino people ain't in the room, then it will have a lot harder chances of like making that connection. So I think that there is racism in code. So there's going to be racism in these algorithms. But I think above all, there's also racism in what we deem appropriate or what is explicit or not. Some people consider people talking about race to be explicit, which I don't think so at all. I think that everybody should be able to talk about race. But, when you have people saying that Black Lives Matter is a terrorist group, and a algorithm can pick up that this is a hotly controversial item, they're not going to be like getting that like kind of decision making from an artificial intelligence. They're going
Yeah,
to be like, hey, this is having a lot of things being said and it's negative, so we're just going to block this word, we're going to whitelist this word. Of course, like there could also be some intentional silencing of black
absolutely.
voices and things like that. But I think it's also important to think about how the code itself and algorithms itself can be biased.
Yeah, I fully agree with what you're saying. I think it's so scary when you think about, like, I was on TikTok recently. I saw this video of this guy who was talking about, and I sent it to you, and it
Yeah,
was about this guy who was talking about the creators fund on TikTok, and it was like when they said what do you represent, and you put like tags of what you represent and what kind of funding you want to get, and like he was putting in black voices, black excellence, black pride, and it was putting in like Black Lives Matter and and stuff like that. And every time it said it, it flagged. It was like this is a hate speech, hate speech. But he put in white supremacy, and it went through. He put in white power, it went through. He put in black. He put in white this, white that, and the same qualifiers. The same qualifiers like Black Pride or Black Lives Matter, and they put in All Lives Matter, White Lives Matter, stuff like that, and he just the simple replacement of the word black with white straight through. And it was just like, it's crazy because white supremacy or all lives matter or that stuff is not seen as hate groups or terrorist groups or none of that stuff, but anything associated with blackness is. And it's not just on TikTok. You see it
mhm,
on Instagram where a lot of black creators are oftentimes trying to tag black this, black that, black this, black that, and their numbers are not the same. Their numbers when they tag black stuff or black anything in their post underperform
right,
intentionally. So like they'll have one video that has 15,000 views, but anything that's tagged black has 400, 100, one view, 20 views. Very little comment, very little interaction because it's not being seen. It's not being picked up by the algorithm. The algorithm is colorblind, but it's colorblind to all things that look like color. It can only see white. And so when it sees white, it's like that's going forward, that's moving forward, that's moving forward. When it sees black, oh, that's probably hate, that's probably hate, that's probably hate. So it's inherent racism, not only built into the fabric of our society and our culture, but it's also built into the very apps that we create. Because these apps, a lot of times, are created by white people. I want to give this little note right here. The CEO of Instagram, Kevin Strongnum, is white. Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Reddit, Snapchat, Twitch, WhatsApp, SoundCloud, Tumblr, LinkedIn. All of these apps are ran by rich, white, cisgendered men. Let that sink in for a second. Some of the most popular apps in our society that get us jobs with LinkedIn, that get us connected to our modeling things like Instagram and stuff like that, the photography, stuff like that, getting us connected in Twitter and Facebook, YouTube, the very platform that we use to show our content, all owned by rich white men. There are only 3 apps so far that I found. TikTok has an Asian CEO. Google has an Indian CEO, and Wattpad has an Asian CEO. But as far as in the diaspora, in the whole aspect of social media, a majority, if not all, almost all, are led by rich white men.
Right. And then you'll have like the occasional rich white woman.
And rich white,
That
yep,
diversity.
yep.
I think YouTube
Yep,
CEO,
YouTube.
Susan something.
Wozniak or whatever. Yeah, that lady. Yeah. And it's crazy, Wajakogi, whatever. I don't know how to say the name. But like, it's crazy to me because people don't see that as a problem. Because
Right.
it's not just the fact that the CEO is white. It's also the fact that all of the top people making the top decisions are also white. The room where it happens, the room where these algorithms are created, the room where people decide what is hate and what is not hate, those rooms are being occupied by white voices. And when it's only occupied by the oppressor, what is going to happen? They're going to keep oppressing because they have no other dissenting opinion. How do you feel about that, Daquon, hearing that?
100% agree with you. I think that this is why we're always talking about representation, and not just like representation on the app, but representation at the table. Like, we should
Yes.
be able to have not only have seats at the table, but be able to be at the head of the table, to
Yes.
own these tables.
Yes.
And I think that's so important when we're considering it, because like we've seen with this Google AI thing, like, if you don't have a Black person like checking these things to make sure it's not like making problematic connections, it's just going to go unnoticed.
And that's what I want. I want to piggyback on that before real quick. I just wanted to say, like, and just because those 3 apps that I named are led by marginalized people does not excuse them from racism. Because the reality is, yes, an Asian person is at the head of TikTok, but where are the Black voices, the Latinx voices, the Native American voices also on that table to say, hey, by the way, that's racist what you're doing right there. Hey, by the way, this is what we're noticing in this upper curve right here. That's the problem. It's not just about having other Black CEOs in those positions. It's about having a variety, diversity, literally diversity in those spaces. And the problem that we're running into with the Google thing, made by probably the CEO is an Indian man, yet it was still racist. Why? Because the people probably creating that algorithm were probably white.
Right.
But what were you about to say? I cut you off. What you about to say?
And I was just going to say, like, getting back on that topic, like, anti-Blackness is a universal language. Anti-Blackness can be found in every single culture, whether you're white, whether you're Southeast Asian, whether you're Latinx, whether you're Black. Like, anti-Blackness can be found everywhere. And it's important that we have a wealth of representation and a wealth of diversity and diverse thinkers, because me as a Black person is not going to think the same as some other Black person, is not going to think the same as some Latinx person. And so it's so important that we have people who are checking these things, because I think the problem lies in, when these apps get big, they rely on their algorithms to flag everything. And when it comes to like reviewing it by an actual human being, that could take weeks to months. And by that time, you have basically killed the video on YouTube, or you've stopped a video from having like its full growth on TikTok, because a lot of those views come in that first few days. In terms of like virality, there's very few videos that go viral after years of being up. So it's very important that when we have these algorithms that are automatically flagging things,
Yeah.
that it's made by people that will consider all different types of options, but also making sure that people, actual human beings, are there to be able to think about that context and like cater to the creators.
Absolutely. I think that we're losing a lot of the human touch. And the problem is that especially in these algorithms, they're not perfect. And even if we all got involved in trying to create a perfect algorithm, it's a machine, and it's not in the place of humanity. And I think that at a certain degree, yes, the algorithm can work, but I think in those videos that are flagged, quote unquote, I feel like there should be a person in the team who has a human touch to say, let's see why this video was flagged. Is it actually hate, or is it educational? Is it actually this? Like, especially the conversation around critical race theory and stuff like that. Like, is this person talking about it really trying to spew hate, or really trying to educate facts on stuff and educate people and whatever, whatever? But like, oftentimes the algorithm is kind of like, flag, it's inappropriate. Flag, it's inappropriate. And they always say, well, we're not taking it down. It's still up, but you're purposefully pushing the algorithm to work. You're purposefully making Black centered stuff work against the algorithm versus working with it.
Right.
And
And
it's
I think
not just, go ahead.
like a good example of this and thinking about why context matters could be like something like lynching. You know,
Mhm.
somebody uploading a video of a lynching happening can be extremely inappropriate regardless. So algorithm is immediately going to flag that as being like gratuitous violence.
Mhm.
But if it's like this educational video where it's like, we're not going to show you the entire thing, but we may show you a still from it, that
Mhm.
could still get flagged for being gratuitous violence because violence is being depicted. But, you know, that person could give a content warning being like, hey, we're going to be talking about lynching and there is going to be a photo shown. And if you cannot mentally take that right now, feel free to scroll away. And so like those nuances get lost when it's just an algorithm.
Isn't that, and I think that's on Instagram now, isn't it? Like the sensitive content viewing thing where you can
Yeah.
like set it as that. That's what people should be doing. It's kind of like, just so you know, this is what's going to be on here. I think that that's the problem, is that we're not seeing is that it's oftentimes, like you said, just basic, like take it off or shut it down or not even give it any time of day, instead of just saying, okay, we know that this video can be triggering for some. Because like I said, for me, I can't watch too much of that trauma porn, baby. I can't do too
Mhm.
much of that, seeing Black people getting beat up, and like, I just can't. I want to hear about it to educate myself so that I'm aware of it, but watching it, I'm not a fan. It's just, I've seen so much of it over and over and over and over and over again. I don't want to keep re-traumatizing myself over and over again.
Right.
But like I said before, if you have that, if you understand this video contains blank, blank, and blank, you're able to decide for yourself. It gives the user agency over what they want to intake.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's the problem, is that we're not giving people agency in what they want to intake or what they want to take in. It's like, this video is going to be talking about racism. Do I want to take that in today, or am I not? I'm not here for that. We don't want to talk about racism every day. That's why our show is not every single day. Like,
Right.
we don't want to talk. We got to prepare for this. You know what I mean? But like, but once again, it's not. We can choose how we want to approach this content. We can choose how we want to approach the conversation. The same should be done in these apps. You should be able to choose, do I want to take in racism right now? Do I want to take in xenophobia? Do I want to take in this right now? I don't want to take in that right at this present moment. Maybe later, but not right now. So I want to just focus on having fun, and or just being on Instagram, just be on Instagram. You see what I'm saying? Or YouTube,
Right.
just be on YouTube. But I do think that even with those sensitive warnings or whatever, it's still like, okay, well, what is considered sensitive? What is considered, what should be censored? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that, you know, thinking about TikTok and TikTok specifically, I've noticed that like a lot of the creators that I follow and like constantly engage with are Black creators. But a lot of times like I will go weeks to months without seeing their content because you know
Yeah.
they get called shadow banned. So like their content is just like not made available. And a lot of them are like educational videos where they're talking about racism, they're talking about issues. There's no acts of violence being shown,
Mhm.
there's nothing like that, and they get flagged. But I vividly remember this one time on TikTok, I was scrolling through and this video popped up that was somebody committing suicide that was on the app. And like it literally started to go viral. Like there were people being like, hey, get off of TikTok for like a week or so. Like I know after seeing that video, I was like, I
Are you
gotta get off
serious,
that.
Daquan?
Dead serious.
It
Like,
wasn't. You sure it wasn't like it was a real suicide? It wasn't like a video of something or.
no, it was a real suicide. And it was very just like, whoa, like that happened. Like it was with a gun, so it was very violent and gory as well. And like that was up on the app for a good while. And
But
it's
black
like
content gets taken down.
that, which is very crazy to think. And I think that really speaks volumes to the racism and what we deem appropriate or sensitive, that like somebody committing suicide can be up on an app for like days to like a week.
It was
But
on there for that. How long? How long? Do you remember how long it was up for?
it had to been at least like a few days, maybe a week max.
Are you? And that's and like I said, it's crazy that the algorithm, like I said, will not flag that kind of content, and that's actual violence and actual like triggering for a lot of
And it
people.
was pushed. Like
And it
when
was.
I saw it, like there was hundreds of thousands to maybe like a million views.
Are you serious, Daquan?
Yes.
And this is the shit, and that's the shit that fucks with me. It's like and this is how you can tell the algorithm is purposefully racist. And it's written with racist intention, homophobic intentions. Did you know that on YouTube you can't say the words queer, gay, or certain kinds of words too many times in your video or to get demonetized? I
Yeah.
did not know that. Now I don't know if they've changed that now, but a few months back I was watching a video and it was kind of like YouTube is flagging videos that contain queer, gay, just the words, not anything, not like it's porn, nothing, just the words queer, gay, LGBT, lesbian, all that. It was flagging the videos, demonetizing them, sometimes taking them down, sometimes pulling the views from it. And I'm like, just for literally saying the word, Daquan.
Yeah.
And I was like, but like you said before, this video that's actual violence taking place stays on that for oh shit, we gotta get on this right here. We forgot about that. But y'all was so big taking all these black creators down. Y'all were like, yeah, nigga this, nigga that. But now
Like
y'all wanna.
that should have been gone in an hour.
And I mean,
30 minutes.
like, but black creators, I mean, within minutes of posting it, taken down, flagged, within
Right.
minutes of saying Black Lives Matter, oh, hate group, and I'm just like, and so that begs the question, Daquan, do you think that we should, as Black people, create our own apps to highlight Black content or people of color content?
I think that we are. Like I've seen on TikTok a couple apps coming up that are supposed to be like black owned and everything like that, but I think that a problem is this question of like, are we ever going to see that max exodus from mainstream platforms? You
Mm,
know, like I think that I've seen a few black owned apps, you know, coming up, but it doesn't get a lot of play because people are comfortable with TikTok. They know what it is.
yes.
And I think also for a lot of creators, their fan base, their platform is on TikTok or whatever app that could be substituted for this. So in order to like transfer apps, like not everybody is going to make that switch. And you know, some people where social media is their full-time job, they have to consider like, is this a risk that I can take?
Yeah.
Even thinking about like back when Vine died, you know, there were, you know, good number of Vine stars that did make it big on YouTube, but there was a lot of Vine people who could not get their audience to
Audience. Yeah.
transfer like that. So like that's a big question of like, can there be this max exodus? Because even with apps like TikTok, there have been like these stands where it's like, oh, we're going to have like a blackout day, or we're going to have like this form of protest. And, you know, large number of people do, you know, participate in that. But with social media being as big as it is, with the internet being as big as it is, and so many different people own it every single day, that's millions of people that you have to try to mobilize all together.
I fully agree. I think that as much as I want to say that's the answer, it's like we have seen that when we create our spaces are not nearly given the same amount of traction, the same amount of attention as spaces that are occupied by the majority. And so when you have this sort of when you have this sort of mini version where we're only catering towards just Black creators here, it starts to get hit by the white rate, the white supremacists. It starts to get hit by the white people who will think, well, why do they have that? Why
Why have Black entertainment television?
yeah,
Why can't we have white entertainment television?
yeah, because that's not every other channel. You know what I mean? And it's crazy to me because like I think as much as I want to say create our own spaces, the reality is unfortunately even our own spaces are oppressed because we've taken on a lot of those traits of the oppressor, because unfortunately in the Black community, homophobia is a thing. So oftentimes when we do have Black spaces like Black entertainment television, BET, there's very little representation of gay Black people on that, or
Right.
trans Black people, or whatever, because like we said before, there's not enough people occupying those seats and spaces. Yes, the Black network, but where are the other Black people from other walks of life in that network?
Right. There could still be colorism
Yeah,
and anti-Black.
colorism. And it's just, and that's the biggest problem I think I have. It's like, I do believe that we absolutely should have our own spaces, but I also feel that just, even if we have our own spaces, I do believe that we should still hold these apps accountable for the racism that they have rampant within their apps, like Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok. There is rampant racism that is consistently happening, and it's crazy because TikTok is a fairly new app. It's fairly new, and we're still running into the same fucking problems as apps like Instagram and YouTube and Twitter. These same battles have been fighting over and over and over and over and over again. And all of these virtue signaling ass motherfuckers talking about we stand with Black people, we stand with Pacific Islanders, we stand with Asian people, Indian people, every other person of color. And bitch, where put your money where your mouth is.
Right. I'm gonna need for you to do more than stand. I'm gonna need for you to act.
Ooh! Say it again, Daquon.
I'm gonna need for you to do more than stand. I'm gonna need for you to act.
Period. And it's so frustrating that in these spaces, like I said before, we don't see the actual action taking place. It's a lot of virtue signaling. It's a lot of saying, hey, we stand with Black people, but yet all of your higher up spaces are taken up by white people, white voices, white straight voices most of the time too. We oftentimes see that people in higher positions of power in regular employment are taken up by white people, that we can occupy the base spaces. Of course, they'll have their one. Did you see, I just want to, this is a little bit off topic, but did you see that Prince Harry or whatever, I don't know which one, the prince or whatever, they were talking about, the queen and them are racist or whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. And like the first time we see him out after that whole debacle is with one Black person that he hired, the one Black woman who's standing with him, walking down the street, who we ain't never seen before. That's virtue signaling. That's virtue signaling. Not you having that one Black lady that you hired yesterday who's probably
I'm not racist. I got a Black friend.
It was Daquon, I swear, look it up. It is the funniest shit ever because it's like this one random Black lady that we have never seen before. Just walking with him after they had the whole debacle about Meghan Markle saying they were racist. But suddenly we got Black people now. Get the fuck out of here. And that's the same thing with these apps. It's a lot of virtue signaling. Like we have YouTube Black.
Right. We'll send our Black creators Black History Month box.
Yeah. Here we go. We love Black history. February.
Oh, we're doing a special spotlight on Black creators for a limited time.
For 2 days. Yeah. You're right. We're good, right? We did it, right? It's like, no, baby, that's not how that works. And I think I just want to ask you, Daquon, do you think that these apps can be saved, or are they too far gone?
I think that it's pretty far gone. I think that with these apps, like something drastic needs to happen, you know, because we've seen it before. Like, Black creators are like the backbone of a lot of these apps. Like, thinking about Megan the Stallion's latest song on TikTok, where like it was like the song literally says hands on my knees, and the white people dancing were like waving their hands in the air because Black people weren't creating dances for it just yet, because they wanted to be like, hey, y'all not going to colonize our dances and get all the credit for it. So I think that, like, a with Black creators leaving, you're going to see a lot of white creators kind of scrambling to like try to figure out how to do certain things, um, because we do see a lot of like colonization of creative content. But I also think that, like, when a lot of people be like, hey, we're not going to be on this app anymore, we're going to go to this other app, we're going to mess with their pockets, they're going to start listening then. You know, we've seen it with small little incremental things, but I think it needs to be something drastic that really hits their pockets and being like, hey, this isn't going to work out how we're doing it. We need to make drastic changes in order to like deal with it. And I think that's just like the product of capitalism. You know, people are thinking with their pockets rather than their mind with empathy.
Absolutely. And I'm telling Daquon, when I see you right here with it, because I was just about to bring that stolen content. I was literally saying, it was on the tip of my tongue, and you took it. I was like, yeah, bitch, you better say that shit. But like, that's exactly what it is. It's so frustrating because you oftentimes see a Black person make a dance, or a Black person or a person of color start a trend. And when white people get a hold of that trend, it suddenly takes off. And they're like, oh, yes, look at us doing the dance like they done fucking made this shit up. And then the credit goes to the white creator who, quote unquote, popularized it.
Right. Gets on all the late night stations.
And it's crazy to me because it's not just that, but you'll oftentimes see a lot of these white creators, their whole personality on TikTok or Instagram or whatever is them being or acting Black. That's their personality.
Ooh.
They will unfollow that Black woman personality every time they get a chance to get some content. And you'll see so many of them. We talked about this a little bit before, touch bases on it before in our other episode. I know we promoting, baby, we promoting. But it was honestly a lot of that going on with certain apps that you'll see a lot of white, like Bad Girl Baby, Daniela, whatever the fuck her name is, the girl off the Catch Me Outside.
Catch Me Outside.
Yeah, it's like she has become famous from adapting AAVE and adapting a quote unquote Black girl personality, trying to act a way that she's not. And it's like, it's not just her. And it's
Right.
usually oftentimes a caricature of a Black woman, not an actual Black woman.
You also see it a lot with white queer people that's like, you know, promoting their inner Black woman. And it's like,
yes, like that's not fully racist as shit to say, number one.
or co-opting AAVE and being like, oh, it's gay slang. And it's like, it's Black queer people that created it. It's still AAVE.
And like, that's the thing that I think it's so crazy. Like, you'll see it's very reminiscent. And oftentimes you'll see when they try to do that, it's very reminiscent of Black exploitation. You'll see oftentimes, especially when they do quote unquote try to spotlight Black creators. It's like, look, we have Black people. We can't possibly be racist because we're showing these Black people, right?
And it's like, which Black people are you showing?
Ooh.
Are you showing the Black people that are tap dancing for massa?
Ooh. And that's the tea, and that's that's what they really don't want to talk about, is the fact that a lot of these Black creators that they quote unquote spotlight are oftentimes Black. They're, what is it called? Black made for white, or like Oreos. What is it called? Something like that.
Yeah.
People are Black, are African Americans, who Candace Owens type people who like get famous simply because they hate on their own race. Daquon, I cannot tell you how many TikTokers I have seen whose whole brand is them not liking Black people and being Black and going against the Black Lives Matter movement, going against critical race theory. It's their whole brand, and they have millions of views, millions of likes, and it's simply because they are saying problematic and racist stuff, and they're making that bag, and that's what
They're trying to get
sells.
that check.
They're trying to secure that check. And it's the craziest part is that we as a society uplift those types of people.
It's minstrelsy.
Minstrelsy at its finest. And it's like, it's crazy because we see that over and over and over and over and over and over again. So I just don't understand. It's just one of those things where it's like, I don't know, Daquon. I mean, at this point, like I said, we know that we can't save it, but do we think that there's a way to develop an algorithm that's truly colorblind? Like, could that even be a thing?
I think that as long as there are racist people, as long as there are racially ignorant people, there's going to be racially ignorant algorithms. I think that like our social media presence is like a microcosm of like our larger society. And I think that like, you know, there is merit to say that like social media is smaller so like you can start there and like build out to larger society, but I think that like if we're not talking about these big issues in our lives, then we're not going to see it on social media, because to be frank, people see it as simply that, social media. Like, oh, it's just an app, it's just, oh,
Yeah.
TikTok is just like this app that people dance on. Like, it's not that serious, when in reality, like, there's tons of things going on TikTok. Like, my For You page never really has dances on it. Like, it's
Mhm.
all like Black History stuff, like
Me too.
maybe
Yeah.
also some, like education stuff. Like, it's really just like focused on like learning things. But you ask somebody about TikTok and they're going to be like, "Oh, is that dancing app?"
Hmm. And that's all they seem to see. And I want to know what Daquan, like, to kind of close out, just want to know, like, with the way that the internet monopolizes our lives, do you think censorship is ever going to go even further in the future? Like, do you think it'll get worse?
Um, I I think so. I, I hate to be very pessimistic, but I think that, like I was saying before, it's a microcosm, and with technology, and as companies get bigger and bigger, they're going to do whatever it takes to get more and more money. And sometimes that involves getting into politics and changing laws. And when you have money, you have power to lobby politicians and get laws on the books to let you do what you want. And that can really change how oversight on social media can be done. And I think that's very scary to think about, of like, can these social media companies really boom like something like Amazon, where it's like Amazon is a literal monopoly and like can try to do whatever it wants.
I think, and it's sad to say, but I fully agree. I think that at this point, you know, we're still fighting to have a conversation about race in school. Like, that's already a problem. That critical race theory is being pushed back on so hard by conservatives and by white supremacists and by racists and people who are just ignorant to black issues and ignorant to what critical race theory is, which is a whole nother episode. But the reality is, this ignorance that we have about racism that is rampant. The fact that after how many years we're still having the conversation about being treated as human beings, as black people, as people of color. It's unfortunate to say, but like you said before, unless it would take a really massive hit on their pockets for apps like Instagram or TikTok or Twitter or whatever to actually make a change and say, oh, wait a minute, maybe we might need to change some shit. But I don't think that will happen because unfortunately there are way too many people who are or acting it to Lord up, kind of like Monique with that situation. Now, like I said, I don't too much agree with Monique is doing right now. She's going a little far with the stuff that she's doing right now. She ain't really
Ooh.
coming at this present moment. I'm not really fucking with her vibe. But before, with that Netflix thing, it's like we already saw what happens when black people and black creators try to stand against unfair, unjust systems, especially those who are empowering white people and white creators and white stories. And so I do believe that we will never stop fighting, but hopefully in time that fight won't have to be as hard because we oftentimes see that when Monique lobbied to say, hey, y'all, please stand with me, delete Netflix, go to something else or whatever the case may be, and show these people what we doing, start a hashtag, people are like, I can't leave Netflix. Oh, this is too much.
Right.
And I think the same thing will be true of Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat. I think that these, and I'm gonna leave it at here, but I think that these big companies, these big heads and these studio heads and also, I think they are aware that people are too afraid to leave because they think they'll miss something, because they've made us so addicted to that instant gratification of a like, of a share, of a comment, because of the social dilemma. If you watch it, give it a chance. It's on Netflix. It's a special. Have you seen before, Daquon?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's exactly like that. They've made us so dependent. It's crack. They've made us so dependent on these apps for our validation in our lives that they know that they can just do a quick little Black creator spotlight, Pacific Islander spotlight, queer spotlight, hi gay, like very much so that energy.
Hi gay.
That yeah, it's a really funny video, but like it's basically like that, and it's like it's until they are dependent upon our fear of missing out. They are dependent upon our fear of knowing that we will never actually unionize to say, you know what, all Black creators step off of TikTok, because we can never get enough people to do it. The real change that we've always seen back in history is happening between when it's multiple, when the bus boycotts happen, and they were like, oh shit, our bag, our money, our coins gone, because Black people rode the bus more than white people did. But they saw that their coins were getting fucked with, so that's when it's like, we might let Black people get ride on the bus on any kind of place they want to sit on. The same is going to be true of Instagram, Twitter, and all the other apps. Until people of color, period, make a stand and say, hey, millions of people are stepping off of this app. Oh, then they'll be like, wait a minute, maybe let's not be racist no more. Maybe. Daquon, did you want to add anything else?
No, I 100% completely agree with you. I think that as we move on, like, there's going to be a lot of things that these large social media companies do to just like pacify us, to just be like, all right, yeah, we're making progress. Progress is slow. We're trying, y'all. It's really hard, but we're trying. And they're going to keep doing that. And like you said, it's going to take mass exodus. It's going to take a huge chunk out of their pockets for them to listen.
Period. So many children grow up never knowing the full scope of what their culture has contributed to society and history. So it's time for a change. Let's take a pause, rewind, and remind the world just how we did that. Now, in the article 26 Black Americans You Don't Know But You Should, written by Michelle Darisaw, we find out about Alice Coachman. Now, growing up in Albany, Georgia, the soon-to-be track star got an early start running on dirt roads and jumping over makeshift hurdles. Now, she became the first African-American woman from any country to win an Olympic gold medal at the 1948 Summer Olympics in London. She set the record for the high jump at the games, leaping to 5 feet and 6 1/8 inches. Throughout her athletic career, she won 34 national titles, 10 of which were in the high jump. She was officially inducted into the National Track and Field Hall of Fame in 1975 and the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame in 2004. Pop off, sis, Black woman, constantly raising the bar.
Right. And I think that's so important to hear, especially now as we see, the Olympics doing things that are very anti-Black women, Black women. And that's an episode though.
Baby, that's a whole nother episode right there. You already know.
But for my We Did That, this comes from blackpast.org. I'll be talking about Bruce Nugent. Bruce Nugent was an artist, writer, actor, dancer, dilettante, and bohemian of 1920s Harlem. He established a place for himself among the new Negro Renaissance stars such as writers Langston Hughes, Wallace Thurman, and Zora Neale Hurston. when he in 1926 became one of the co-editors of Fire, a short-lived avant-garde journal which would represent the true voice of the younger generation of African American writers. Nugent published Smoke Lilies and Jade, his now signature short story in which homosexuality is the central theme in the first and only issue of Fire. Like Nugent, Alex, the story's protagonist, proudly embraces his gay orientation and lifestyle, declaring, "You see, I am a homosexual. I have never been in what they call the closet. It never occurred to me that it was anything to be ashamed of. And it never occurred to me that it's anybody's business but mine." Unlike his more closeted Renaissance peers, Nugent was an unabashedly open, happy, openly same sex loving man, an identity that may have costed him a more prominent publishing career. Nevertheless, Nugent's credits included publication in the journals Crisis and Opportunity, as well as in Elaine Locke's New Negro anthology, a role on Broadway in DuBois Hayward's Porgy from 1927 to 1928, which included the London cast of the play, and much later co-chair of the Harlem Cultural Council in the 1960s.
I mean, hearing about Black people being openly gay in the 1920s, the balls, the nerve,
Right.
the unique, what is it? Charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and
Even
talent.
talent.
Baby, that is, I mean, that to me, in the fact of like, he knew what coming out of the closet would mean for his career, and he still did it anyway. That's
Right.
called being a bad bitch. That's a bad bitch right there.
Period.
Period. So, as always, thank you all so much for watching, and keep the conversation going in the comment box down below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up. And if you are listening to us on our podcast, please rate and review on whatever platform you're using. Now, if you want to follow us on social media, our handles are at Andre Talks a Lot and at Daquon950. You can also follow our podcast on Instagram at The Melanin Margin for updates of new content. We will see you all next week on The Melanin Margin, where conversations about race, baby, are never off the table.
Goodbye now.